This is Congressman James Lankford from my office in Washington, D.C. I represent the 5th District of Oklahoma that is right in the middle of our wonderful state. One of the bills I want to mention to you is called the Taxpayers Right-to-Know. We just passed it this week. The Taxpayers Right-to-Know takes a lot of these issues about duplication that we all know. For instance, we have 57 different job training programs scattered over multiple agencies. We all know that, but we don't know multiple things about those, and it's very difficult to get rid of them because all the agencies hang on to them and say, no, ours is a good program. So the way I set this bill up was very simple. It requires a list from every single agency of every program that they do, how they evaluate that program, how much the program costs as far as administrative costs, how many people they serve, how many people they have on staff, and a very important thing, the statutory authority. Why are they doing that at all? Where did this program come from? Putting all those things together, we're able to lay out a big list of all the different programs in the federal government and force the agencies to compete on areas where they're the same. So we have all these different job programs. We're saying first and foremost, does it work? How is it being evaluated? If it's not being evaluated, we need to shut down a program that's not being evaluated, prefer one that is. Many of these programs we shouldn't do as a federal government at all. And so we need to be able to pull it out, expose it, how much it costs, what it's trying to accomplish, and find out it has no statutory authority or it has no connection back to the Constitution. So it needs to be able to go away. We're spending hundreds of billions of dollars in duplicative programs that need to be resolved, but we've not been able to get to it. This helps us actually set the table to get to those duplicative programs so we begin to isolate them and then begin to eliminate them. So that's very important to us. The second bill is something I've worked on also for 3 years called the Unfunded Mandates Reform Act. Now, a lot of people aren't following this, but we all know the impact of unfunded mandates in the federal government. When someone here in Washington, D.C. decides they want to do something, and then suddenly they just pass this on through regulation to every state, business, tribe, county, whatever it may be, and everyone has to change their rules. Whether it's the color of street signs that happened a couple of years ago that the federal government decided every street sign in America needed to match their preference, or whether it's storm water disposal that every city had to do, or whether it's a private business that suddenly gets a mandate from the federal government that dramatically impacts jobs and employment and just basic investment. Every family and business has to balance their budget. The federal government doesn't balance their budget, and so they have this wasteful mindset of when they want to do something, they just make everyone spend more money on it. We've got to stop that. Unfunded Mandates Reform Act gets ahead of that, make sure people that are affected by these reforms actually have to be at the table to be a part of the decision of how that reform is done. Right now, someone in the federal government does it, passes it on, no one has the opportunity to push back. This will change that. So it's a very important bill for us to be able to argue our way through, finally get it passed on the House floor. We're about 15 different total bills on the floor this week, but let me just give you three more of those. We dealt with the IRS this week, and I know there are major issues with the IRS. A lot of people have followed those issues. This particular bill forbids the IRS from asking some basic questions of citizens that they really have no business asking about. Their religious preference, their social engagement, things that they really should not track and should not matter. The IRS should be neutral to every individual regardless of their political preferences, their social preferences, or their faith preferences. This forbids that and pulls that away from the IRS. We also did a reform of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the CFPB. The CFPB is an entity that was created during the Dodd-Frank bill that was done 4 years ago. That bill itself creates this new agency that's accountable literally to no one. Not the president, not the legislative branch, not the judicial branch. It stands on its own, has its own separate funding drawn from the Federal Reserve. It does a lot of damage to our economy if it makes a wrong decision and has absolutely no accountability. We did a major reform of that to be able to change dramatically the CFPB this week. And then one final thing, and this may be something people are tracking and some people are not. The federal government has changed a lot of regulatory policy lately by something called sue and settle. That some outside group, whether it be an environmental group or an endangered species group or whatever it may be, would sue the federal government for some decision they hadn't made on a certain schedule. Then the federal government would step aside with that group. They would make an outside deal, go to a court, have them sign off on it, and then everyone that's affected by it suddenly gets news that a federal court is now asking them to change things. We can't do that. People that are affected by issues of any dispute should be at the table to be a part of that dispute. They shouldn't be excluded from it. We made major changes on that this week in the House of Representatives. There's a lot of reforms that need to occur in how our three branches of government function. It is very clear to most Americans that the executive branch is far exceeding its authority. The legislative branch is not getting its job done as well. We're trying to fix that. That's why Good Government was here this week. We want to be able to push that over to the Senate and say, join us in trying to fix the problem rather than we just complain about it. Thanks for allowing me to serve you. If there are ways that we can help you in the days ahead, feel free to contact my office here in Washington, D.C., 202-225-2132, or in Oklahoma at 405-234-9900. Of course, langford.house.gov, or Facebook or Twitter at Rep. Lankford, R-E-P. Lankford. Thanks, y'all. Honored to be able to serve you.